Here we go. Next movie of 2026. What is up, everybody? Random Random Man here, bringing you my review for 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, in one take. The plot of this post-apocalyptic horror film basically follows Spike as he is inducted into Jimmy Crystal's gang on the mainland, while Dr. Ian Kelson makes a discovery that could alter the world. Going into this movie, I was highly anticipating it. This was one of my most anticipated films of 2026, and we are only just over halfway through January in us receiving this film, as it is the direct follow-up to last year's 28 Years Later. Now, the previous two films in the series before that one, 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later, I did enjoy, even though I have said many, many times again that horror isn't usually my thing for film, but last year's 28 Years Later surprised me in that it was as effectively emotional as it was grippingly grotesque, and it ended up becoming one of my top 10 favorite movies of 2025. And we got a follow-up right away with The Bone Temple after it was set up in the previous film. Both of these movies were shot back-to-back, and with the last movie bringing back Danny Boyle as the director and Alex Garland as the writer, both of them originated 28 days later, we would see that they both came back for The Bone Temple as well. Alex Garland did return as the writer, but Danny Boyle did not return as the director. He is only back here as a producer. The director here is Nia DaCosta. Two of her previous movies I have seen and reviewed. Now, her Candyman film from 2021 I enjoyed, but her film The Marvels a couple of years later I did not enjoy. So I saw what she was able to do in terms of a directorial vision with her Candyman film, and I was curious to see what she would do in continuing on this saga previously set up by 28 Years Later. Without further ado, starting out with the cast and their performances. We have Ralph Fiennes as Dr. Kelson. He was in the previous film, but he was more of a supporting character in that he only showed up in the back half of the narrative. And here, he is basically front and center for a lot of it, showing his isolation and being around this bone temple that he assembled to memorialize the dead after the infected have all been running around after this pandemic outbreak has come about with the virus. And then seeing him just very introspective in terms of his approach for a lot of things, and then also seeking some connection in many ways, despite being so literally walled off by the outside world, also for him to not get himself killed too in this post-apocalyptic world. Ralph Fiennes really is one of our best actors working right now. Not just one of the best of his generation, but I would even debate maybe one of the best ever. In recent years, he's really knocked it out of the park with his Oscar-nominated turn in Conclave, his performance in the previous film, and now here he gives a way more fearless performance than what he has done in the past. He has been typecast as villains in many, many movies before, but here, with his, I would say, iconic look in being covered with orange iodine and just having this kind of presence that is both imposing but also very tender, I think that is something that really shows off the power of his performance, especially as it gets more unhinged as the movie goes along towards the end. We also have Jack O'Connell returning as Jimmy from the previous film. Now, one thing I neglected to mention in my review for the previous film is that it ended in a pretty jarring and abrupt way. Him and his gang just come about and just slaughter a bunch of these infected, and his character was initially introduced in the opening scene of 28 Years Later, but now as an adult, he is played by Jack O'Connell, and he is this leader of a cult that are called the Fingers, as in the fingers of Satan, as he believes he is the son of Satan himself. Last year, O'Connell played the villain in Sinners, and here he is a lot more menacing. once you first see this guy on screen, you think, oh my God, this guy has to get some sort of consequence or get some sort of ending to where, like, yeah, he needs to suffer because he's bringing about so much suffering and pain everywhere with his gang. And it's so deliciously evil, I would say. That's like the best kind of villains that you would want in a film like this because of how they're relishing in hamming it up in terms of screen time and all this stuff. I mean, the scenes between him and Ralph Fiennes, I think, are two of the best dialogue scenes I've seen recently. Just how they are both literally different sides of the same coin in terms of just existing in this post-apocalyptic world. And then we have Alfie Williams returning as Spike from the previous film. He was front and center for a lot of that film. But here, he is now inducted into the gang by Jimmy, as was seen in the final scene of 28 Years Later, leaving that movie off on a cliffhanger and setting this up. And he's great once again. Last year, with his performance in 28 Years Later, he gives one of the best child performances that I had seen that year, and also probably in recent memory. Here, he is still very much, afraid, and also trying to navigate this world that he previously did with his dad, but then now, like, how he is just with this really killer gang, literally, all this all together. And he also has another member of the Fingers gang by his side in a way that takes sympathy on him, played by Erin Kellyman. I thought she was great as well, too. And with all of this together, in terms of these being the main principal cast of characters, I think they are all outstanding. And getting into the writing here, once again, Alex Garland did pen the script for this film like he did with the previous 28 Years Later film. And one thing I loved about 28 Years Later that really took me by surprise was its approach, in that the first half of that film played out like a typical zombie film with a bunch of action in between. And then the second half, which surprised me, and for not a lot of people it worked, but it did for me, it slowed down quite a bit. And it got into a lot more of the nitty-gritty and the emotional and humanistic aspects of living in the post-apocalyptic world that this movie set up, and with Ralph Fiennes' character coming into play here. And here, I would say that the way it's set up tonally and just how it is narratively, it feels like the second half of the last film, but it permeates throughout the rest of the narrative. Of course, we do get action and a bunch of slaughtering in between here, but we get to see that, with these concurrent narratives between Jimmy and Spike together with the rest of the gang, and then Dr. Kelson on his own, also interacting with one of the alpha infected people. I mean, that was surprisingly wholesome, because he is able to somehow tame this being, but also try to figure out, oh, maybe this is the key to, like, curing all the infected and maybe bring humanity back. But with both of these storylines going on together, we see a further expansion of this world, and that is something that I really wanted to see with this continuation of the Bone Temple after it was introduced in the previous film, and just in this narrative as a whole. That is exactly what I got here, and I couldn't be more happy to say that too. Also with how Nia DaCosta does direct this thing. Now, here she continues on with what Danny Boyle previously established here. Of course, Danny Boyle set up this world with Alex Garland with the first 28 Days Later film, but here we still get all of the really brutal aspects of what it is like living in a zombie apocalypse here, and how these characters are unraveling and revealing their true colors, both good and bad. I mean, this is a very big gray world, although Jimmy, Jack O'Connell's character, really is pure evil here. It's like, you want this guy to be killed or dead in some sort of way. But in any sense, what DaCosta does here, I think her hand in terms of directing is just so assured, and it brought me in right away to what I was seeing here. And it goes and continuing on with the technical aspects of this movie. Now, previously, I didn't notice this until I recalled after seeing it. 28 Years Later was shot primarily on iPhones. The iPhone 15 Pro Max models of phones with different lenses. Only during the night vision sequences were more traditional cameras used. That is not the case here. More traditional cameras are used throughout here, so it's not as experimental or frenetic or abrasive in terms of the videography or cinematography here, I should say. But I think it worked because in terms of the through line of the narrative going all together and just continuing on with what we're seeing here, I think that is all just showing how stunning it is. It is showing how stunning it is still, and it's so grimy and dark and a lot of bleak aspects in living in this world to be showing. And then how it is all cut together, how it is shot. We occasionally get POV shots, like we get with the alpha named Samson by Dr. Kelson in this movie, and then all other stuff with the action in terms of dispatching the infected and all this other stuff. But then we get to see just like how vast the world is in it being very woodsy, a lot of foresty areas here, and then seeing the Bone Temple once again here after it was introduced in the last film. It's showing just how much this world has changed, and what with Kelson's character just showing off like what he is about here, also having a particular taste in music. I should mention that as well too. I mean, a bunch of different songs that do pop up here that are very popular, I think helped add on to the aura and world building of this movie. The way it just moves all together. The movie runs at just over an hour and 45 minutes, and just, yeah, well paced with how we go back and forth between both of these concurrent storylines before they eventually merge into the third act. The music here, I loved it as well. The original score was done by Hildur Guðnadóttir, the Emmy, Grammy, and Oscar-winning composer who is only missing a Tony Award to complete her EGOT. It's very orchestral and classical sounding, like she is known for in many of her scores here. The score for 28 Years Later, I love too. That was done by Young Fathers. That group like brought in how propulsive and thumping that was, especially with the causeway sequence in 28 Years Later. Oh my God, that was one of my favorite scenes of any movie in 2025. And here we don't get something that similar to it in terms of the tension, just bringing it up. That happened right before the halfway point of the last movie. Here, we do get such a memorable scene in the third act involving both storylines finally coming together and all these characters being together with the Bone Temple. And it adds on to Ray Fiennes' performance just being so out there, but so awesome at the same time. And culminating in just how there's like a moment here. There's a moment that just brings about pure escapism in many ways for these characters, even though it's like, WTF is going on here in many ways. But I thought that just brought it out in another way that, you're in it. You're in it if you're with this movie from the get-go, because the movie has that tone, again, that is very dark, very bleak. It's occasionally funny too, but it's also deeply human in what it is trying to express. And that's what I think really makes me gravitate towards these two movies in particular throughout the series thus far, this only being the fourth entry. And then again, how it all comes together, how it ends. I think it was so satisfying as a sequel, ending off this part of the narrative with both this and the previous movie being shot back to back. And then what happens in the final minutes of the movie, the final moments. Now, it's already been out there and known that a third movie in this trilogy is coming, and a certain individual does show up here. I was the only one that audibly wooed in the theater when he showed up, even though I knew that person was going to be there to connect it all with the series together. But yeah, even with me yelling woo in the theater, seeing this thing at 10 o'clock in the morning, there were not that many people anyway, and seeing that and where the cliffhanger ends off here, in that the next movie is supposedly coming, you could not have made me want that sequel more right away. Like, I want it now. I want this to continue because I want to see the further expansion of this world and how more and more characters are coming together, and just seeing how all of them are going to deal with the infected. And again, I was so taken by the characters, so taken by the world. It's not just all of the gore, blood, and all this other stuff that most of these zombie movies are known for. It really goes into the whole aspect of humanism and what it's like living in this world through the characters that I cared for, really having me care for them throughout. And when it's all said and done together, I mean, wow, I was very much into this movie, and if you couldn't already tell, I loved The Bone Temple. How do I feel this movie compares to the previous film? Ooh, that's actually a little tough because, like I said, I was surprised by the last film, and this film, I think, builds upon a lot of it, and for the whole of it, it feels like the second half of the previous film just permeating throughout the rest of the narrative, and that's what I loved most about 28 Years Later from last year. I'm going to say for now that these two are on an even playing field for me, but that doesn't diminish like whether I say tomorrow or a week from now that I prefer the Bone Temple or the previous film, whatever. Both of these movies, I think, are just so fantastic in what they are doing, having me be entertained, be put all together with the filmmaking. The writer for the next film is still going to be Alex Garland, if I remember correctly, but the director is not yet confirmed. And if Danny Boyle doesn't come back, Nia DaCosta would be a more than inspired choice for how she did a magnificent job with this film. This is easily my favorite of the 3 movies of hers that I have seen thus far, and I really want that sequel, but in the meantime, seeing both of these movies back to back, I wonder how much of a enhancement in terms of an experience that would be. If you haven't seen 28 Years Later, one, it is currently streaming on Netflix, so you can catch up with it before seeing The Bone Temple, and it is also integral for you to see before seeing The Bone Temple. But if you've seen that film or have yet to see it, be sure to see it before seeing The Bone Temple, as this is a film that I think, only it being the second film of 2026 for me, easily is something that is going to stand out for a while. I mean, I hope the rest of 2026 sets as high of a bar as The Bone Temple does in terms of movies, because again, I loved it, and so far it's my favorite movie of the year, and I highly recommend it. With all of that being said, my final verdict for 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, is 4.5 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. Social media links in the description. Subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.